One of the strangest things about Emily Carter's life was that she could spend an entire day speaking to her own family and still feel as if she had never said a single word. Every morning in the quiet suburb of Cary, North Carolina, Emily Carter woke up before the rest of the house. Not because she enjoyed early mornings, but because years of responsibility had quietly trained her body to begin the day before anyone else even stirred. At 6 o'clock, the alarm on her phone vibrated softly on the nightstand beside her bed. Though most mornings Emily was already awake, staring at the pale morning light slowly forming behind the curtains. She slipped out of bed quietly, so she would not wake her husband Mark, who usually slept another 30 minutes before starting his workday. The house was calm and still as Emily walked downstairs into the kitchen where the first part of her routine began. She started the coffee maker, opened the refrigerator, and mentally reviewed the small details of the day ahead. Lily had a history test at school and needed a video conference with a new client. Jason, their 20-year-old son who was home for a few days from college, would probably sleep late after staying up past midnight finishing a paper. Emily moved around the kitchen with quiet efficiency as the smell of fresh coffee filled the room. She toasted bread, scrambled eggs, and placed 3 plates on the dining table in the exact positions she had used for years. The kitchen window faced the street where early sunlight touched the tops of the trees lining their neighborhood. A delivery truck rolled slowly past the house while a few neighbors began leaving for work. By 6:30, Mark walked into the kitchen, already focused on his phone as he checked overnight emails from colleagues in different time zones. "Morning," he said automatically while pouring coffee into a mug. Emily smiled and returned the greeting before placing a plate in front of him. Mark thanked her quickly, but his attention soon drifted back to the glowing screen in his hand. A few minutes later, Lily rushed downstairs wearing a hoodie and cape. She grabbed a piece of toast, took 2 quick bites, and sat at the table for less than 5 minutes before announcing she needed to leave early. Emily reminded her gently about the history test and asked if she had packed the calculator required for the exam. Lily nodded without really looking up and hurried toward the door. The house felt briefly busy as Mark gathered his laptop and Lily searched for her car keys. Then just as quickly the noise faded. Within 15 minutes both of them had left for the day. Emily remained alone in the kitchen, clearing the plates and rinsing the dishes while the clock on the wall ticked steadily towards 7. This quiet moment after everyone left had become familiar to her over the years. It was often the only part of the morning when she could pause long enough to notice the stillness of the house. Yet even then her mind continued working through the invisible list of responsibilities she carried every day. She needed to pay the internet bill before Friday, confirm Lily's dentist appointment next week, and remind before the deadline arrived. Emily also worked part-time at a small insurance office in downtown Cary, where she handled customer paperwork and answered phone calls during the late morning hours. The job provided helpful income, but also allowed her to maintain the flexible schedule that kept her family's routines running smoothly. By 8:15, Emily finished cleaning the kitchen and prepared to leave for work. She grabbed her purse, checked that the doors were locked, and stepped outside into the soft Carolina sunlight. The drive to the insurance office took about 15 minutes along a quiet road lined with pine trees and small shops that had slowly grown around the expanding suburbs. Emily enjoyed the calm rhythm of that drive because it offered a brief moment where no one needed anything from her. When she arrived at the office, her coworkers greeted her warmly. They appreciated Emily's reliability and friendly manner with customers who often arrived frustrated about confusing paperwork or complicated policies. Emily listened carefully to each person and helped during those hours at work. She often felt more visible than she did inside her own home. Customers thanked her for assistance. Coworkers asked her opinion about small decisions. Her presence mattered in clear ways. The contrast was subtle but noticeable. At home, Emily sometimes spoke during conversations, yet felt as if her words disappeared before anyone fully heard them. Years earlier, things had not always felt this way. When Emily and Mark first married, they spent long evenings talking about their hopes for the future. They laughed easily, shared stories about their childhoods, and dreamed about building a family together. After Jason and Lily were born, the pace of life became faster and more complicated. Responsibilities multiplied, schedules overlapped, and conversations gradually shortened as everyone focused on daily tasks. None of it happened suddenly. It was more like watching a photograph slowly fade under sunlight until the details became harder to see. Mark's career grew demanding as he moved and went travel. Jason became deeply focused on academics and sports before leaving for college. Lily filled her time with school activities, friends, and social media conversations that often continued late into the evening. Through all of those changes, Emily remained the steady center, holding the routines together. She scheduled doctor visits, prepared meals, tracked bills, cleaned the house, and remembered every important date on the calendar. Yet the more smoothly everything functioned, the less anyone seemed to notice the person quietly making it possible. One evening a few weeks later, the Carter family gathered for dinner around the rectangular wooden table in their dining room. Emily had prepared baked chicken, roasted vegetables, and a small salad. The warm smell filled the room, while soft music played quietly from a speaker near the kitchen counter. Mark sat at the table with his laptop open beside his plate, finishing a few messages before closing the screen. Lily talked excitedly about a new photography club she had joined he hoped would lead to an internship next summer. Emily listened with genuine interest, asking questions that encouraged each of them to continue their stories. At one point, she began sharing something from her own day at the insurance office. A customer had told a funny story about misunderstanding a policy form, and Emily thought her family might enjoy hearing it. She began describing the situation with a small smile. Halfway through the story, Lily's phone buzzed loudly on the table, and she immediately picked it up to read the message. Mark glanced at the television. Mounted on the wall where a news alert appeared about a major business announcement. Jason interrupted to ask his father about a job opportunity he had just remembered. Within seconds, the conversation shifted away. Emily's story faded quietly before reaching its conclusion. No one intended to ignore her. They were simply pulled in different directions by the constant distractions of modern life. Emily finished speaking anyway, though she realized no one had actually heard the final sentence, while the conversation moved on. Later that night, Emily stood alone in the kitchen washing dishes as the house gradually became quiet. Mark was upstairs preparing a presentation for work. Lily was in her room, talking with friends through a video call. Jason had driven to meet a classmate for coffee. The water ran gently over the plates while Emily stared briefly at her reflection in the window above the sink. The glass showed the dim outline of the kitchen lights behind her and the darkening sky outside. For a moment, she wondered when the feeling had first appeared, the subtle sense that she was present in every corner of her family's life, yet somehow invisible within it. She did not feel anger toward the people she loved. Mark worked hard to provide for the household. Jason and Lily were good children with bright futures ahead. But somewhere along the way, the simple act of truly hearing Emily had slowly disappeared from their routines. She dried the last plate and placed it carefully in the cabinet before turning off the kitchen light. As she was really quiet, and a small thought crossed her mind that surprised her with its honesty. In a house full of people she loved deeply, Emily Carter sometimes felt as though she were slowly fading into the background of her own family's story. If this moment reminds you that the people closest to us sometimes carry quiet feelings we do not immediately notice, remember that listening carefully can change more than we realize. And if you appreciate stories that explore the hidden emotions inside everyday life, you can support this channel by subscribing and sharing these stories with others who believe empathy